Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a concept you are probably super familiar with. It's an image so delightfully absurd that it's become a literal cornerstone of modern motivational thinking, a fish desperately attempting to climb a tree. We've all heard the comparisons, we've all seen the posters, and honestly, we all know exactly what it feels like to be that fish. But what if I told you that the history behind this famous metaphor is entirely misunderstood, and even more astonishingly, the biology behind it is just dead wrong? Today, we're going to debunk a massive historical myth and uncover a biological reality that is just way more fascinating.
Okay, let's dive into this. You have undoubtedly seen this profound and incredibly famous quote. It's been plastered all over the internet, shared on countless social media feeds, and printed on thousands of classroom posters to inspire students. And it makes sense, right? It's a beautiful sentiment about individualized intelligence and not forcing everyone into the exact same mold. Plus, it's attributed to one of the greatest minds in human history, Albert Einstein. That gives the quote some pretty massive weight and authority for sure.
Well, here's the crazy narrative twist. Albert Einstein never actually said this. According to the completely massive, ultimate quotable Einstein collection compiled by Princeton University Press, the legendary physicist has zero record of ever uttering or writing these words. None at all. So you've got to wonder, if the genius of relativity didn't come up with this brilliant metaphor about the fish and the tree, who actually did?
Section 1. The Animal School Allegory. The True Origin. So, to find where this idea actually comes from, we've got to travel back over a century. It all started way back in 1898 when Amos Dolbear, a prominent physicist and inventor at Tufts College, wrote a piece called An Educational Allegory. He described this satirical school where animals were forced to learn every single skill. So the duck was forced to run instead of swim, and the eagle was punished for not climbing trees the prescribed way. The real punchline of Dolbear's fable was that an abnormal eel, who could just do a little bit of everything, was made valedictorian. Now, over the decades, this fable kind of morphed and mutated in various newspapers. By the 1940s, a squirrel was added to the story, getting Charlie horses from trying to fly. Finally, jump to 2004, and the whole allegory gets distilled down to its core metaphor by author Matthew Kelly in a self-help book. And that's where he mistakenly slaps Albert Einstein's name right on the front of it. Just like that, a modern myth was born.
And you know what's really amazing? The West definitely isn't alone in recognizing how absurd this imagery is. Take the ancient Chinese proverb Yuanmu Qiyu, which translates directly to climbing a tree to look for a fish. It uses this exact same metaphor. It perfectly describes the folly of using completely the wrong method to reach your goal. It's kind of like studying for an exam by meticulously reorganizing your entire desk. Sure, it feels productive, but you are literally looking for a fish in a tree. So both Eastern wisdom and Western fables absolutely agree here. Fish and trees do not mix.
Section 2. When fish climb trees. Biology breaks rules.
Now here is where we aggressively pivot the narrative. Because while we humans love using the climbing fish as our ultimate metaphor for the impossible, nature literally doesn't care about our metaphors. Out in the wild, the rules are entirely different. We have 3 actual biological rule breakers that routinely survive and thrive totally out of the water. We've got the climbing perch native to India, the mangrove rivulus found throughout the Americas, and the absolutely unique mud skipper from West Africa and the Indo-Pacific. These animals look at the strict boundaries between water and land and just treat them as mere suggestions.
Section 3. The mangrove rivulus. A tiny marvel.
Let's zoom in on our first totally wild anomaly to see just how adaptable life can actually be. The mangrove rivulus is this tiny killifish, typically only 1 to 2 inches long, but it is a genuine marvel of evolution. Get this, it can spend up to 66 consecutive days entirely out of the water. When its home pools dry up, it seeks out damp fallen logs, sometimes even squeezing into dead insect burrows. And once it's inside, it literally alters its gills to retain water and completely changes its biology to breathe air and excrete nitrogen waste directly through its skin. If it needs to move, it performs this forceful tail flip, basically throwing its own head over its body to jump across the land. And if all that wasn't enough, it's one of the only known vertebrates that routinely reproduces through self-fertilization, which means they are largely a population of hermaphroditic clones. They are entirely self-sufficient survival machines. And to put their extreme hardiness into perspective, just look at their environmental tolerance. They can survive in waters with 0 salinity, like pure freshwater, all the way up to 68 parts per thousand. That is nearly double the salt content of normal seawater. They also comfortably withstand temperature swings from 12 to 38 degrees Celsius. They just absolutely refuse to be limited by their environment.
Section 4. Meet the mud skipper. life on mudflats.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next point. If the mangrove rivulus is a master of hiding on land, the mud skipper is the absolute superstar of the amphibious fish world, actively choosing to spend the vast majority of its life fully exposed right out in the open air. To pull this off, they use this brilliantly mechanical three-step process that scientists call crutching. It's a lot like a human walking on crutches. The mud skipper swings both of its front fins forward, plants them securely, and then vaults its entire body weight over those supports before resetting for the next cycle. Literally no other fish on Earth moves quite like this. It allows them to navigate thick mud, jump surprisingly fast, and yes, successfully climb up the roots and trunks of mangrove trees.
Now, as you might guess, spending all day out in the air presents a pretty huge problem. Your eyes are going to dry out. Standard fish don't have eyelids because, well, their eyes are constantly bathed in water anyway. But the mud skipper solved this with absolute biological genius. When it needs to blink, it physically retracts its eyes downwards into these fluid-filled cups located right beneath the eye sockets. A single blink pushes the eyes back out, instantly wetting the surface, clearing away mud and debris, and protecting the cornea. It is just a flawless adaptation for a fish living out in the open air.
The really crucial takeaway here is that mud skippers aren't just barely surviving on land, they are living intensely dramatic lives out there. As long as their skin stays wet, oxygen passes directly into their blood. Out on those exposed mudflats, they violently fight for territory. They throw their mouths open and flare their fins to force rivals into retreat. And if a female happens to be watching, those displays get even bigger and way more committed. Plus, they constantly have to evade terrestrial predators, like snakes, with absolutely no cover to hide behind. And ironically enough, when the ocean tide finally rolls back in, the mud skipper actually retreats into a deep underground burrow just to stay safe. It's an animal perfectly at home in a habitat where it technically shouldn't even belong.
Section 5. Redefining biological genius. Shattering limits.
Which brings us right back full circle. By looking at these incredible fish, we're basically forced to rethink that very first metaphor we started with. Think back to Amos Dolbear's original 1898 fable. He wrote about the eagle getting a demerit because it didn't climb the tree in the prescribed way. That animal school punished creatures for not fitting into a rigid, standardized mold. But as we've just seen with our amazing amphibious fish, nature itself doesn't care about the prescribed way. Nature is infinitely flexible. It totally rewrites the rules.
What this really shows us is that limitations are so often just human constructs. We literally invented the idea that a fish in a tree is stupid. But a mangrove rivulus surviving inside a dead log for 2 whole months isn't stupid, it's a marvel. A mud skipper vaulting across a mudflat to fight for a mate isn't doing it wrong, it's displaying biological genius. These creatures prove that true genius isn't about fitting comfortably into the expected mold. It is about having the incredible ability to adapt, evolve, and break that mold entirely.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. We just spent the last few minutes exploring how life inevitably finds a way to shatter the boundaries placed upon it. The metaphor tells us not to judge ourselves by impossible standards, but reality shows us that we're actually capable of far more adaptation than we ever realize. So if nature doesn't even limit a fish to the water, why do we limit ourselves to the expectations of others? Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me today. Keep questioning the things you think you know, and hey, never be afraid to climb your own tree.